All right, let's dive into one of the biggest mysteries in all of human history, the sudden, absolutely catastrophic collapse of the Bronze Age. We're talking about a time when mighty empires, massive trade networks, entire civilizations, just poof, they were wiped clean off the map. So, what happened? Let's go find out.
I want you to picture this. Go back in time 3,200 years. The world back then was, believe it or not, a lot like ours. The Mediterranean Sea? It was basically a superhighway for trade, connecting huge, powerful empires in Egypt, in Greece, all across the Near East. And then, in what seems like the blink of an eye, the span of a single lifetime, it all came crashing down. It's like someone just hit a giant reset button on civilization.
So that's the big question, right? Why? How could so many advanced, interconnected societies all fall apart at pretty much the exact same time? This is one of history's greatest whodunits, and today we're going to follow the clues together and unmask the real culprit.
Okay, so before we can solve this thing, we really need to get our heads around the sheer scale of the crime scene. We've got to survey the damage and see just how much was lost when this ancient world just disappeared.
You know, this wasn't just one kingdom falling. This was a total systems collapse. I mean, mighty empires like the Hittites, a powerhouse civilization that went toe-to-toe with the Egyptians, they vanished so completely that for centuries, people thought they were just a myth. And in Greece, every single major Mycenaean city? Leveled. Gone. The trade routes that were the lifeblood of this world just dried up. And the cultural loss? Wow. Entire writing systems and even spoken languages disappeared. Forever. It's like the lights just went out across the entire ancient world.
Now, for more than 100 years, archaeologists and historians had a prime suspect for this whole catastrophe, a mysterious group of raiders known only as the Sea Peoples. Our first big clue in this case actually comes from Egypt, which was really the great survivor of this whole collapse. Carved right into the temple walls of Pharaoh Ramesses III, we find this incredibly dramatic inscription. It tells this terrifying story of invaders who were just laying waste to everything in their path, a destructive wave heading straight for Egypt. You can almost feel the terror in those words, can't you?
And just like that, the mystery seemed solved. Early archaeologists gave these invaders their name, the Sea Peoples, and a very simple, very compelling story took hold. It was a classic tale of barbarians at the gates, a violent invasion that brought a golden age to a fiery, brutal end. And for decades, that was the story everyone accepted. Case closed. But, as archaeologists kept digging, that simple story started to look, well, a little too simple. It began to unravel. The Sea Peoples, yeah, they were probably a factor, but it became clear they weren't the whole story. Not by a long shot.
See, this wasn't a world of isolated kingdoms just doing their own thing. It was a highly globalized system, kind of like ours. Think about it. To make bronze, the high-tech material of the day, you needed copper, which came from Cyprus. But you also needed tin, which had to be imported from all the way over in modern-day Afghanistan. This incredibly complex trading network was the engine of their entire civilization. But being so interconnected also made them vulnerable. A historian named Cline came up with a new idea. He called it the perfect storm theory. And he asked, what if it wasn't just one thing that went wrong? What if it was a whole bunch of catastrophes, earthquakes, famine, maybe invaders, all hitting at once? A crisis so big that it just overwhelmed society's ability to cope. Suddenly, the story was getting a whole lot more complicated. And this is where our investigation takes a huge, dramatic turn. Right as historians were rethinking everything, a revolution in science was about to blow this case wide open.
All of a sudden, there was this whole new world of evidence. Archaeologists started teaming up with geologists, climate scientists, and they realized the most important clues weren't carved on temple walls after all. Nope, they were hidden deep inside things like ancient pollen, cave formations, and even mud from the bottom of the sea.
And the evidence they found was just overwhelming. Scientists drilled core samples from the Dead Sea and found ancient pollen that showed a massive, catastrophic drop in plant life right around 1250 BC. Over in Greece, they looked at stalagmites. Those are the rock formations that grow up from a cave floor, and they're like a natural history book. They trap a record of rainfall on their layers over centuries, and they showed a period of extreme long-term dryness. Then they drilled into the floor of the Mediterranean Sea itself and found that the water had suddenly cooled, which meant less evaporation, which means, you guessed it, less rain. All the forensic evidence was pointing in the exact same direction.
They'd found the real killer, a catastrophic climate event.
And this wasn't just a couple of dry years. We're talking about a mega-drought that lasted for over 150 years. This wasn't just a local problem. It was a full-blown climate crisis that threw the entire Mediterranean world into chaos.
This new data, it changed absolutely everything. Eric Cline, the historian with the perfect storm theory, he had literally just sent his book off to be published when the first big climate study came out. He frantically emailed his editor with a simple 2-word message in all caps: "Stop the presses." That's how powerful this new science was. It had instantly rewritten history.
So now that we've unmasked the real culprit, let's go back and re-examine the whole mystery. What does this ancient collapse look like now in the light of this brand new climate evidence?
Remember the old story? The Sea Peoples were these mysterious, warlike villains who showed up out of nowhere. But the new evidence paints a totally different picture. The mega-drought leads to massive crop failure. That leads to widespread famine. That causes entire societies to break down. And it sends waves of desperate people on the move, just looking for some place to survive. So the Sea Peoples, they weren't the cause of the crisis. They were a symptom of it. They were, in effect, history's first known climate refugees.
And this, right here, is the huge lesson from their time for ours. Their globalized world was super efficient, but it was also incredibly fragile. That long, punishing drought was the external shock that the system just couldn't handle. It set off a devastating domino effect. Famine led to migration, which led to conflict, and that ultimately brought the whole house of cards crashing down.
And that leaves us with one last really powerful question, doesn't it? They were a sophisticated, advanced, interconnected civilization, and they were completely undone by a change in their climate, something they had no control over. So as we face our own climate challenges in our own interconnected world, what lessons should we learn from their story?